Hi, this is Cindy from Vintage to New, and today I'm going to show you something different. I'm going to show you how to do some little doodle roses using watercolors, and I have my expensive watercolor palette over here with my palette of colors that I like to use, but I'm not going to use those today. I'm just going to use my grandkids' Crayola watercolors, so that if you're not a watercolorist, you probably don't have a big set of professional grade watercolors, but you could go get just a little palette of Crayola watercolors. Now, these probably won't last as long. They'll fade and things like that, but there's not going to be a lot of light on your book. So there's that. And the colors are kind of primary kind of colors, and so you're going to have to mix just a little bit to get the right colors. Whenever you use these kind of watercolors, it's important that you just take a drop of water, put it in the center of each of the cakes that you want to use, so that the watercolor paints can get softened up. And you need to have a better brush than what comes in the watercolors. These brushes are not ones that you want to use. So you'll have to treat yourself to one. This is a size 8 brush. You could probably go up to like maybe a 12, something like that. And you could go a little bit smaller depending on what you want to do. But the brush needs to come to a really good point. Let me get this to focus. Okay, see how that comes down to a really nice point? That's what you want. And this is not a super expensive brush. This is an American Journey brush from Cheap Joe's Art Stuff, but you could probably find a fairly decent one at your local art supply store, or I've not looked at Hobby Lobby, but maybe someplace like that would have them. So let's get started doing our card. And what I wanted to do also is add just a little wisp of color down the side. And I think I'm going to use, let's just use this really, really bright green. See what happens. I dabbed it off on my rag over here. I didn't want a super big amount. So just down and around. This is another American Journey 1-inch soft brush, just to lay in some color, just so it's just not pure white. So there's that. And then it needs to be dried. So I'm going to use my hair dryer to dry this. Okay, so when I said you might have to mix, this is what I meant. This was that really bright green that I just put down. This is the medium green that was there, and then there's this kind of a blue green that's in this, and that's really not what I wanted for any of my greens in this. So what I did is I used the medium green. So here's my medium green. Put some in the lid of my box, and then just the tiniest dot of the red, and mixed it in, and now I have a nice flower stem kind of green. So that's how I'm going to get my green. But the first thing I'm going to do is paint my rose. So I'm just going to take some red, and I'm just going to do just a really simple circle. Like this, just around and around, leaving lots of white space in between, and then just coming down, adding just some little layers like a rose has down this front. Okay? And if you wanted to add a little bit of orange in with your red, it would be pretty. This set doesn't have an actual pink, but that little bit of orange looks really nice. You could put a little bit of yellow, but leave the white or this really pale background showing through. Okay, that doesn't look like much yet, but I promise we'll make it look better. And then I'm going to take that little bit of green that we mixed up, and I'm going to do a stem and some petals, some leaves, excuse me. Just some little leaves here and there. Roses have that little thing that comes up on the side here. And I'm just going to do a little streak up like that. And then I'm just going to add in, I'm not putting any more paint on because I want this to just really fade in. Just some little leaf shapes here and there. Not really attached to anything. So it's like there's rose leaves in the background. Okay, so there's that. And so when we dried this before, this background that we put in, it has to be dry, otherwise this paint will bleed into that paint. So now I want to dry this. Okay, so now that's dry, and I'm going to use one of my Micron archival ink. This is an 01 marker. All right, and I'm just going to add, I'm not going to outline it because I don't want it outlined, but I want it to be in the same kind of shape as that line. And then on these leaves, I want to add a nice little point to them. So you can see I'm not really outlining it. I'm just kind of giving it a little more. And these down here even less, because they're really not attached to anything. And this is that little part of the piece of the rose that comes up. Like that. And then the actual rose part, I'm going to outline my circle center and then just do, I'm not really even outlining the brush strokes. I'm just adding in the petals. So let me go up the side here, doing the same thing. All right, then here's the biggest tip of all. Little dots are awesome. They add a lot of texture. It's very doodly. All right, and then if you wanted to add in little vines and put just little doodads on it, it looks really nice. And so here is our rose, and you can see it's just a few little strokes, a little bit of outlining with my Micron pen, that little blush of color in the back, and that was all done with the Crayola watercolors. So if you have your expensive watercolors, of course, go use them. But if you wanted to try a new technique, I'm going to be adding in some of these to my journal. So here is one on a book page that had lines. Here's just another one. This was a plain sheet of that paper. I added the rose and I drew in some lines using a clear ruler. Another book page. This one has a whisper of pink in the back. And then down the other side we have this one with the doodle roses. Another doodle roses. And then back to the one we just did. So I hope you find this interesting, and I hope you just give it a try. Go back and just watch it. It's just that center swirl and then little pieces on the side. Try adding a little yellow, a little orange, and be sure to leave empty space because that's your highlights. So until next time, this was Cindy from Vintage to New.